You finally have a president who is defending our borders and our nation. After decades of politicians who destroyed Detroit to build up Beijing, you finally have a champion for workers in the White House. And instead of putting China first, I'm putting Michigan first, and I'm putting America first.
For decades, both parties have ignored so many of the things that we needed to do, whether it was tackling the federal government's out-of-control spending, inefficiencies, whether it's tariffs, whether it was the border for the last 4 years. And if things were easy, somebody else would have done them. But he's doing it. He's willing to spend his political capital for the good of the long-term benefit of the country. But he understands that someone's got to stand up and do the right thing. Good to see you all. Happy Wednesday. We've made it over the hump. A lot going down yesterday as President Trump and the team celebrated the first 100 days. We've got a great show headed your way right now. Tammy Bruce, you might remember her from Fox. She is now the principal spokesperson over there at the State Department, working with Marco Rubio. She's going to join us in a little bit. Conversation I had with her at the White House about Ukraine, China, cuts, the focus of the State Department. Fascinating conversation. If you're interested in knowing our strategy in Ukraine, what we're doing to deter China, and how they are implementing these cuts. Then Secretary Scott Turner, he is the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. That was the job that Ben Carson had in the first term. He is leading this effort. But what's fascinating is some of the stuff that goes in to our housing regulations, mind-blowing in terms of DEI, woke policies, transgender stuff that Scott Turner is taking head on. We're going to get to that in just a sec. But as I mentioned yesterday, the first 100 days, I get asked this a lot. Well, Sean, I agree with the policies. Why don't the poll numbers reflect it? The answer, very blatant now. The Media Research Center, our friends over there, came out with an amazing report. 92% of the coverage of the legacy media is negative with respect to President Trump. I mean, it doesn't if you had any product in the marketing world that was getting 92% negative coverage, you would not wonder why you weren't selling any. So no wonder his poll numbers suck, because the media is literally 100% against him. They are literally battling him every day. And it's unbelievable. You would think that they would have gotten the memo. I mean, 92%, my God. I mean, just think about all the stuff that he's done to keep his promises to the American people, and 92%. Unbelievable. And it doesn't give up there. I mean, they are already talking about impeaching him again. This is why I'm so emphatic that we must keep the House. This is this guy. I didn't even know he was a member of Congress, but this guy's name is Shiri Tandadar. And I want to play you this clip. This is him announcing the articles of impeachment that he's filed. Obviously, they're not going anywhere, but this gives you a hint as to what's coming. Take a look.
This is Congressman Shri Thanedar. Donald Trump has already done real damage to our democracy, but defying a unanimous 9-0 Supreme Court ruling, that has to be the final straw. It's time we impeach Donald J. Trump. The court said the wrongfully deported Kilmer Garcia must be allowed to return and receive due process. Trump ignored it. He ignored the Constitution. He ignored the very checks and balances that keep our democracy intact.
So I know you've probably never heard of this member of Congress before. And as a guy who tries to stay up on all things politics, I didn't know. And I got to be honest with you, and I'm not saying this like in a disparaging way, but considering he's not somebody you've ever heard of before, he's not someone that you see out doing a lot of media, I literally could mistake that for like a late night comedy sketch. Like, and it's also not compelling. I mean, we all know that the courts, he's not defying something. The court talked about facilitating his return, and the president's addressed this many times. You may disagree with it, but he's not undermining it's a joke. But I say this because in all seriousness, if the Democrats were able to take back the House, this is what we're in store for again. No more working together towards a big, beautiful bill or codifying immigration things. We're going through impeachment, hearing after hearing. It's never going to stop. But just when I thought it wasn't just Congress and the media, I thought that corporate America had kind of gotten on the bandwagon too. Even guys like Jeff Bezos. But yesterday morning began with this bombshell report, and that Amazon was going to start, when you go on Amazon, that they were going to start adding a description of why the prices had gone up and how much the tariffs were adding to the cost of buying whatever you were buying on Amazon. So here's the widget. It costs $5. The tariffs added 50 cents. It's now $5.50. And they would be very explicit. It was fascinating. Caroline Leavitt, right when the briefing was going on yesterday, had an opportunity to address this. Take a listen to her.
A perfect crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this, since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise, because as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Is Jeff Bezos still a Trump supporter?
Look, I will not speak to the president's relationships with Jeff Bezos, but I will tell you that this is certainly a hostile and political action by Amazon and Secretary Powell.
So I want to show you, though, it's interesting because Maria Bartiromo over at Fox Business actually made some really interesting points about how ridiculous this move would have been by Amazon. And I want to play you, because she broke it down really, really well. Let me play you how she responded to this.
What do you think of the Amazon decision on the tariff in terms of clarity? And Caroline Leavitt saying that the president sees it as a hostile and political act to say that the price increases that they are facing would be due to the tariffs.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's hostile or not. I will say that there was no mention whatsoever at Amazon about Joe Biden's inflation. And the fact is that we got to 40-year highs. Inflation measured by the Consumer Price Index was up 9.1%. We all remember we were at the cash register. Everything cost so much more. So, you know, why they're putting a little bug now, this is because of the tariffs, and they didn't put a little bug, this is because of the $7 trillion spent by the Democrats under Joe Biden, is a question.
So you get that. Like, why now? You know, it's funny. They buy all this stuff from China. They're in bed with China. And yet they didn't say anything during Biden. And now they want to blame Donald Trump for everything. But it's interesting. But the long story short is, once they got called out for this, they went into like crisis mode. No. This was just a proposal. It was only supposed to go into like a small piece of our site, and this wasn't going to happen. And I don't know who called whom, but Bezos and Trump spoke, and suddenly Amazon saying, "Oh, I don't know where this came from. It must have been an intern that did it." Anyway, they walked it back, but that was also, by the way, only after their stock tanked. Should have bought it then. Buy low, sell high here. But it was funny because they paid a price for it, and they knew it, not just politically, but I think even, like I said, their stock tanked. So it was fascinating how this all played out. By the way, the president spent most of the day after that initial briefing heading off to Michigan. And it was interesting. He got a great welcome there, a great discussion. He expanded on why he put America first and why he's doing what he's doing. And I've explained this before to you guys, that like he could do the easy thing, but he's willing to do the hard things. Here's him talking about his first 100 days.
You finally have a president who is defending our borders and our nation. After decades of politicians who destroyed Detroit to build up Beijing, you finally have a champion for workers in the White House, and instead of putting China first, I'm putting Michigan first, and I'm putting America first.
That's exactly the point. For decades, both parties have ignored so many of the things that we needed to do, whether it was tackling the federal government's out of control spending, inefficiencies, whether it's tariffs, whether it was the border for the last 4 years. And if things were easy, somebody else would have done them. But he's doing it, and he's willing to spend his political capital for the good of the long-term benefit of the country. And I think sometimes people again, forget that this guy is a master marketer. If he really just cared about his own poll numbers, he wouldn't take the political heat for some of this stuff. But he understands that someone's got to stand up and do the right thing. And I think sometimes we forget that. By the way, in a moment of troll excellence, Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, greets him on the tarmac. And if you watch, you'll see Trump, she's getting a ton of crap from the left because she did this like Chris Christie type. Remember Chris Christie after the hurricane and Obama gets off the plane and he hugs him? Well, Gretchen Whitmer is getting a bunch of, heat from the left because of this hug, this embrace. But I think this is all Trump. I think he's trolling the heck out of her. In fact, he brings her up at the rally that he's doing at this base. And, well, I'll show you this because it's fascinating because he calls her up. And I think once again, like he caught her off guard in the Oval Office the other day, just drags her into this event. She looks completely awkward. Then he hugs her at the end of the staircase. And then this is him calling her up on stage at this airbase yesterday.
Well, I hadn't planned to speak, but I'm on behalf of all the military men and women who serve our country and serve so honorably on behalf of the state of Michigan. I am really damn happy we're here to celebrate this recapitalization at Selfridge. It's crucial for the Michigan economy. It's crucial for the men and women here, for our homeland security and our future. So thank you. I'm so grateful that this announcement was made today, and I appreciate all the work. Thank you.
You notice the word that's not there. So appreciative of you or for your leadership, Mr. President. It was so awkward. I think Trump loves this. He loves trolling her between the Oval Office, the hug, and then that. She was so uncomfortable being there. And I think she's got to be like, okay, I'm the governor. I need to be here. But Trump's having a blast, by the way. And this is what I keep telling you. He's got a level of comfort and confidence that he didn't have in the first term. I mean, plus he was still under attack. Anyway, I just thought that was fabulous. Then he goes on. Well, he'd already taped it. And you guys know I asked Caroline about this in the briefing room. I said, why does Trump do interviews with Jeffrey Goldberg and Terry Moran of ABC? And then he airs it last night. And I just got to look this because for this exchange with him really exemplified, I think, why he relishes moments like this. Let me play you a clip from their interview last week.
Murderers, criminals in this country, we have to get them out, and we're doing it. By law. And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
He had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. That
was Photoshopped. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. I picked you, Terry. Hey, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
Right, we'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshop? Well,
here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir. I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS, as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They weren't there, but they're there now, right?
No,
but they're there
in
now.
your picture.
Terry.
Ukraine, sir.
He's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
We'll take a look at that.
You do such a disservice.
We'll take a look at that,
Why don't you just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something else?
Why don't you just say yes and move on? I love how he's like, I picked you because no one knows you, but that's okay. And I do wonder, I think that when you think about who is at ABC between Stephanopoulos and David Muir and some of these other Martha Raddatz and Jonathan Karl, to me, this goes back to the question. I get he can handle anybody, and he did. But why do you give these guys the time of day? That's what I've always thought. And it's just, to me, fascinating that he does this, and a lot more to get to. So, as I said, some great conversations headed your way. Tammy Bruce from the State Department, going to break down Ukraine, China, and some of the DOJ reforms there. And then Secretary Scott Turner, the Secretary of HUD. And I'm telling you guys, I did not realize how broken our housing system was. And he is doing a phenomenal job getting the ship righted. So I'll get to that in just a second. On Thursday, tomorrow, we've got a fantastic panel. Mahek Cook, you remember her, former Congressman Nan Hayworth, and Chris Stegall, a great panel with them. And on Friday, Byron Donalds from Florida is going to join us to talk about working with Trump in Congress and why it's different now than it was in the first term. And then our gold friend, Tim Murtaugh, who is on the Trump campaign, is going to break down the first 100 days with us, especially the media and some of the other stuff. So fascinating. And we'll get the latest on what's going on Capitol Hill, et cetera. Before I do that, you guys have heard me say this. If you're a long-time watcher of the show, you know that on the wellness journey, one of the things that anyone realizes, including myself, is that getting a good night's sleep is critical. And I have had the ultimate game changer. I started with melatonin, and then I would try magnesium. And I am so unbelievable because I found something that's made an absolute real difference. You've seen this before. This is one of the empty bags. I think I have a couple more around here. Here's another one. Here's another one. I'm about to empty another one of the cinnamon flavor upstairs. It has made an absolute difference. I love the company. It's founded in America. It's run by people who share our values. But the cool thing about Beam's Dream Powder is it's backed like this. The healthy nighttime blend that it is has got ingredients that are shown to improve sleep. So you wake up feeling refreshed. I jump out of bed this morning. I got up like an hour early, ready to go. And it's got all the stuff that you used to probably have tried at one point or other individually: reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigen, melatonin. I love this stuff. I take it every night, 1 scoop in a cup, and heat it up in the microwave. I do it for about 30 seconds. It's so amazing to fall asleep, stay asleep, and then wake up feeling refreshed. But right now, Beam is giving all of you the ultimate Patriot discount of 40% off. So you can try any of the flavors you like. And by the way, you cannot go wrong. It is so good. If it wasn't an end of the day thing, I would drink it all day long. So go to shopbeam.com and use code SPICER. Shopbeam.com/SPICER. Use code SPICER for 40% off. It's a great American company. It's a huge investment in yourself and your wellness. So again, go to shopbeam.com/SPICER and use code word SPICER for 40% off. All right, guys, I know this is a bummer to think about. It's April 30th right now. 15 days ago was tax day for most Americans, but many of us might still have unfiled or unpaid taxes. And what is the IRS doing? They're ramping up enforcement because Washington loves to spend money. They need money. They need this. And I didn't even realize this, but there are over 5,000 new tax liens filed daily. Property seizures, bank levies, wage garnishments. The IRS is applying levels at unbelievable in unbelievable ways that they haven't in years before. But the good news is this: if you have unfiled taxes or you owe money, Tax Network USA is here to help. So whether you're self-employed, their personal taxes, it doesn't matter whether you owe $5,000, $5 million, it doesn't matter. Even after the deadline, you can still get some serious help. And these guys are the best in the business. You don't ever want to take on the government, never mind the IRS, on your own. They have a completely free consultation that you can get. They will help stop any penalties or threatening letters or whatever. So do me a favor. If you are one of these people that have unfiled taxes or unfiled or owe a ton of money, give the folks at Tax Network USA a call, 1-800-958-1000, or visit tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. One full word. tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. You may have missed the deadline, but you haven't run out of options. The best in the business of my friends at Tax Network USA. All right, guys, I want to kick this off with Tammy Bruce of the State Department. She talks about Zelensky, Ukraine, what they're doing to get a deal over there with Putin, China, downsizing the government. It's such a great conversation. Without further ado, Tammy Bruce. Tammy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here.
My pleasure.
So you guys, obviously, I think the big news, well, who knows what the big news is? Every day it seems to shift. But let's just put it this way. I'll start with what's going on in Ukraine. Sure. For people who don't understand, it's funny. I think everyone understands that Donald Trump wants to get a deal. But give us the lay of the land. What does a deal look like in principle right now?
Well, the very first thing, certainly President Trump has been clear on this, as has Secretary Rubio, is that there has to be a ceasefire. Okay. Right? The killing has to stop. Ukraine agreed to that, as we know, 30 days. It would be nice for it to be an extended dynamic, but Russia couldn't even do that. Well, what the secretary said at NATO a few weeks ago was that we were going to judge Russia based on their actions, not on what they said. And the president had noted on Truth Social in the last few days that this Russia bombing of civilian areas all of a sudden is unacceptable. It's got to stop. We saw that during Palm Sunday even when they did that as well. So we are looking at a situation also which is not going to just last forever. We're not going to have meetings about meetings. It's not going to go for months or years, right? The normal, it's like, oh, well, you'll have a summit and then you'll meet 3 weeks later. Clearly, with everything the administration's doing, it's fast. And they have a goal that they know they want to accomplish. And I think that it is, and the secretary mentioned now that the issue is a matter of days. And it doesn't mean withdrawing from helping to work to get to peace. But they said both of those parties have to agree, have to come to the decision. Both will have to make compromises. Generally, no one's going to be happy coming out of this, but the killing has to stop. Right. And so that's where we're at. So if we were, what they mean when the secretary said, and I think the vice president noted that we would stop being engaged, for the first 100 days of so many different accomplishments, is that we have been flying around the world at the drop of a hat. We've been meeting at every meeting, calling all summits, participating with special envoys and with the president and on the phone and with the secretary running around the world. And the point is that we will still be assisting, but it will look differently. We're not going to be flying around to have meetings to see if there's going to be some success. Everybody knows what needs to happen. The killing has to stop. The attacks have to end. And it's in Putin's interest as well for this to end, because now the president is noting that there will be some other mechanism and perhaps more sanctions, but that he wants it to be diplomatic. But if it's not, he will have other options.
Okay. The key word in that whole thing is trust, right? Russia does not have a track record of keeping its word. The president, I think, has given Putin a long leash, right? Because he wants to get peace. He wants to end this war. And frankly, I don't think there's anyone else in the world outside of Donald Trump that can actually achieve that peace.
Sure.
What does it take for, Russia is calling for a 3-day ceasefire. but I guess my point is, this, in my opinion, is the best deal that Putin will ever get for a lasting peace. Well, and Zelensky, the meeting seemed to have gone really well in St. Peter. What is it that Russia needs to show to be trusted?
Well, I think many people have noted, including the secretary, that this actually is not about trust. It's about what you do and what you don't do.
Right.
And so this is...
To your point, they can say the right words.
Well, they can. So this is going to be assessing a dynamic to determine, and you can, if someone really, truly understands that this is their best effort. This is going to be the thing that they have to sign. And that inevitably, I'm not involved in these diplomatic conversations. You know very well that we're not going to get ahead of commenting or speculating. But I think that there are certain situations where you understand when there's leadership in the White House, when America is strong, that it is in your best interest to behave and to operate in a certain manner. And that we know, and fortunately we have Donald Trump framing this situation, that this is one of those times. This is, again, I think the nature of what Putin understands is possible. Certainly, again, the sanctions have had a tremendous impact on him. Those aren't going anywhere. The president musing publicly about perhaps more sanctions. But there are many different things. And Putin, and I've said this a few times, is that it may be fun to be an oligarch and you think you can do whatever you want, and that the only place you can vacation is North Korea. So the reason Putin wasn't at the funeral is because he can't go there, because he would have been arrested because of the invasion of Crimea, of the invasion of Ukraine. And of course, Crimea is mused about by the legacy media. Media want, and other individuals want, other interested parties want people to be afraid or have that be a point of contention. We don't know what is being discussed or what is going to be an issue that both parties have to deal with. What we do know is that there are people alive today who will not be alive tomorrow. And that's what the president cares about. He wants the slaughters to end. And that's when we get to discussions of details, is when the ceasefire, an actual ceasefire, exists. And I think that, again, Putin, when it comes to being a part of the world, has an interest. And of course, economically, there's an interest there as well. And a strong America makes encouraging people to do the right thing a lot easier.
And it seemed, like I said, at least image-wise and the readouts, that the Zelensky meeting at St. Peter's seemed to go well. And so is it a fair read? Obviously, President Trump wants peace, and by extension, obviously, Secretary Rubio and everyone that's on the team. Then the two other parties that matter are Zelensky and Putin. It seems like Zelensky's there, and that we just need to get Putin. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I think that it was great when they had the dust up in the Oval Office. They thought, oh, that conversation's never going to happen again, or that relationship is over. The fact of the matter is, as we know, the president is blunt and direct in what he wants. He knows what he wants. He's not a wobbly man. I don't know what was discussed, but those of us who've talked with him, we know what he wants. The world knows what he wants, and that, I'm sure, was simply perhaps they had the conversation they should have had instead of what happened in the Oval Office. We are at a point where they know that this is, again, not going to go on forever. One has to decide. Clearly, the Ukrainians and we said it was good. And what that means, we'll find out. And hopefully then that is what's going to translate to the Russians about the fact that if peace is possible, led and supported by the United States, now is the time. There's no way to win this militarily.
Right.
This is just going to continue to be a meat grinder, and there's certainly no way for Putin to win. And I think he knows that at this point.
Let me pivot to China real quick. I believe that China poses the greatest existential threat to America and to the world, both economically and militarily. What is our strategy when it comes to deterring China?
Well, I think that it's certainly multi-pronged. I'm not going to discuss the nature of decision-making of American leaders, but we see it already happening. We see it within the tariff framework. We see it in the arguments regarding business and exchanges in the supply chain regarding China. The first thing you have to do, we also see it when it comes to the Panama Canal and even the Suez Canal, and the nature of what China has been doing, the Belt and Road initiatives that we know Panama also abandoned. So we are working with the world to change the kind of the free reign China has had.
Do you think tariffs make it easier or harder to do that? In other words, I think that we've used tariffs as a soft power tool in the past to go against the Soviet Union. It seems like Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has alluded that might be part of the current strategy to get people on board
Well, the president said very specifically that the entire tariff effort was to even the playing field, because then it makes for the best negotiating tool you've ever had. Right. And now we see where China is as an outlier with all over 130 countries coming into wanting to make a better economic deal for the United States. But it does highlight and reminds people of the amount that China has been controlling. We saw it during COVID, and not just supply chain issues, but the fact that we were reliant on China for the ingredients for our pharmaceuticals. The nature
that to me, right? I mean, our pharmaceuticals, our PPE, like they sent us a disease and then said, hey, let us sell you all the stuff.
And so that was a wake-up call. Americans didn't know, understandably, they wouldn't necessarily know over their daily lives, but that is still a problem. This dynamic, and they're seeing it, and, the president acknowledged that there was like some kind of an exchange, or Xi was maybe attempting to reach out, and that wasn't a weakness. That's a strength, because you want to get something done, because China understands this can't go on. They know that we have been ripped off for generations. They know it's going to change. Donald Trump is the best deal maker in the world. This is the start. The tariffs are one thing, and that will be negotiated. But then there is the nature of how they're dealing with the world. That is already being dealt with. So when you ask, what are we doing? We're doing everything.
Yeah.
And we're not going to stop, because we recognize that America must be in charge of this, and that we're no longer going to be victimized or ripped off by or taken advantage of by China or anyone else. And for China, that's bad news, because they've enjoyed the outreach they've been able to have to control certain sectors. That will change, and the rest of the world will be in better shape for it.
All right, last thing I just want to ask you about. Secretary Rubio this weekend, who was out on Meet the Press and other places, talking about the reforms, because I don't think they're cuts. They're reforms. They're efficiencies that are being made in the State Department.
Correct.
And I think correctly framed that for years, the size of the world has not changed, but the State Department has grown.
That's right.
So explain to people out there who are worried about cuts and all of this, like, what is the goal here?
Well, this is, again, as you've noted very well, this is about a reorganizing for a kind of an efficiency that you've got bureaus and offices that were all doing the same thing, that were not talking to each other, that you had such a large bureaucracy that it stopped movement of ideas, of basic things like paperwork, of being able to get approvals for things. It became this monster consuming energy, consuming progress, and moving forward. And of course, the American people, one of the reasons, the many that Trump was elected, he talked about the problem with government, the nature of using government against the American citizen. And so certain bureaus that were in charge of censoring the American people have been closed. The nature of whether or not you can do the same job or a better job with fewer people, less of a bureaucratic space is necessary for the government to continue to run. So imagine when we think about like foreign aid, it was like, oh my gosh, you're shutting down a certain bureau or USAID, or you're doing, USAID continues to exist. But instead of being a monolithic thing that no one could ever reach and made its own decisions, not involving U.S. policy or preferences, they now will be based in every bureau for the regions so that people can work together, knowing what a region needs, knowing what the diplomats there require and what the government might want, the government that we're working with and otherwise, and that everyone is held accountable. What a concept. Not only can you get as much and more done, it will be done by spending less. Isn't that what we expect? So we want to be more efficient, more nimble, faster for the 21st century. We want to get more done. We want to assist more places, and we can get more done and spend half as much even and still have more of an impact. Samantha Power, the outgoing USAID person in 24, Democrat, obviously, her public complaints, she had a public event. She complained that 90% of money spent on foreign aid was going not to the programs. It was 7 to 10% was going to the program. She said, that is my biggest frustration. She managed to get it from 7% to 10. So it's
so her idea of a good job, but was from getting 7% to 10.
That's correct.
So 90% still not going to it.
She was still frustrated, and her outgoing message was, this has to change. Marco Rubio is making that change, because if you truly are committed to a foreign funding,
so why isn't that? But to me, when you just said that, honest to God, as a guy who loves what you guys are doing, who follows Donald Trump, like that is a mind-blowing number.
It is, and coming from a Democrat.
No organization would be able to sustain itself if 90% of the funding.
That is correct. And that's why we are concerned. You've heard from Elon Musk about the nature of how much is being spent, and that it was literally unsustainable. We have a responsibility as caretakers of this government in this country to not have it collapse under its own weight. And that's what we're doing. And it's not a reckless thing. In fact, again, if you care about foreign aid and helping people who need it, you should want even 50% less and having 3 times more aid go out. What a concept.
Yeah.
We deserve it. Our founders deserve it. The people who died creating this country deserve it. And everybody who's buried in every field for our soldiers deserve it. And everyone living in this country now, that this is why it matters. We're doing it for the future, but also to say that, the government got big and it doesn't need to be. In fact, it's harming us. We're going to bring it back into a place that makes America great again.
Well, by the way, and I'll just say this in closing, I love watching your boss on television. Marco Rubio has been putting on master classes, so I'm not sure how much that's natural, how much you and your team are preparing him, but I feel bad sometimes I don't. But when I watch him get announced on a Sunday show, I go, that host is just going to get crushed. You guys are doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
I love how he articulates the mission and the focus.
You know what he got? It's all the time in the Senate. That is all him. It's been the easiest job in the world because I don't have to worry about the nature. We work together, but his understanding and grasp of why he's doing what he's doing is clear. And so that's who you see when you see him on television.
All right. Tammy Bruce, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You know what? We've talked, that was amazing to really understand what we're doing with Ukraine to try to get peace. And President Trump has done so much on that front. As I said to Tammy, I don't think he's probably the only one that can do it, but it's not just there. He's doing a lot in all these other places. We played out all of these areas, the border and everything else that he is doing. And I think that's true. One of the other areas that he's having this effect on is housing. And the Department of Housing and Urban Development doesn't get all the headlines, but you do realize how much of a crisis there is in our country in terms of affordability for average everyday folks, for low income folks, for veterans. And a lot of the problems, even after a hurricane, we talked about, you saw what Rick Grinnell was doing in California. When you think about North Carolina and Kentucky and these places where the federal guidelines make it difficult for people to rebuild and to get back on their feet. And so what can the government be doing to get back into the game, help people get back in the game? And I think not only that, but you realize how much DEI, woke policies, et cetera, are not focused on the mission of housing. And President Trump made a great decision when he brought in Scott Turner to lead the Department of Housing and Urban Development. That was the area of expertise for Dr. Ben Carson during the first term. And Scott is doing a phenomenal job. We had an opportunity to sit down with him at the White House. Take a listen to what he is doing over there at HUD. Secretary Turner, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, sir.
So we're here at the 100-day mark. You run HUD. What changes have happened or are happening in the first 100 days that make a difference in how we're dealing with housing and urban development?
Well, Sean, thank you. It's so good to be with you. You know, at HUD, the first thing I would say is that we've returned to having a mission-minded focus. And the reason why I say that, because in the past several years, in the past administration, HUD lost focus of its mission. And so now myself and our team, we're very deliberate and detailed about staying focused on the mission and keeping the main thing the main thing. In particular, as you alluded to, we have a housing affordability crisis in our country. We have a homelessness crisis, disaster recovery. And so we've been working hard on tearing down burdensome regulations that make it harder for home builders to build, that make it harder for localities to have flexibility as it pertains to zoning.
So you think about it like California, right? I mean, I know Rick Grinnell's talked about some of that challenges that people. How involved are you guys in in an area like California that had a huge disaster go through and people want to rebuild? What's the role of like a HUD there?
Excellent. So regulations have been crippling our nation. Disaster recovery, housing affordability, development, the affirmatively further and fair housing rule. Let's just take that one. That was like a regional zone, and where Washington was telling localities how to zone their neighborhoods. And you know as well as I do that every neighborhood is unique. When you talk about disaster recovery, like the Palisades in Altadena in California, like the hurricanes that hit Asheville, North Carolina, because it's so burdensome, because regulations are so heavy, people can't even go in to rebuild their homes at the Palisades and restore their families and rebuild their businesses. And so for myself, I have been encouraging localities to ease regulatory environments from home affordability, from housing to development, and even disaster recovery, because these families want to get back into their homes and rebuild their lives.
So as we sit and mark 100 days, what do you say when the president says, all right, Scott, what have you got for me? And he did that at that cabinet meeting the other day. What is it on your top 5 list?
Well, first, Mr. President, we're making housing affordability better, according to the president's EO, to make living more affordable, to bring the housing costs down, tearing down regulations, building public-private partnerships, allowing flexibility to go back to the localities, giving locally elected mayors economic development to have the ability to shape and to zone and to build their neighborhoods. And then I would say, you know what, we took down the equal access rule. Equal access rule is restoring biological truth back into our government, restoring biblical truth back into our government.
What does that mean? Explain that.
So that means that any HUD-funded facility, including a housing or homeless shelter, they have the ability to give services to those who are coming in according to their sex at birth. If you're born a male, you're a male. If you're born a woman, you're a woman, a female. And so we took the equal access rule down that says that if you're a transgender male, for instance, you cannot enter into a HUD-funded facility where females are there. And a big reason, Sean, that they're there is because they have gone through domestic violence. They've gone through abuse. And so
you don't even, honest to God, until you said that, I'm thinking, why is this an issue in housing? Like,
yes,
if I buy a house or she buys a house or they buy it, who cares, right? But you just, I would have never even thought of that had you not brought it up.
Yeah, you're talking about just HUD-funded facilities, including women's shelters, where transgender males were entering into those shelters and abusing women. Well, we want to protect the women of this country. And then also, Mr. President, we also found over $2 billion in savings at HUD, $260 million just in contracts, $1.9 billion in misplaced funds that we de-obligated and returned back to the Treasury. We restored HUD VAST, $2.2 million to homeless veterans. And so we have been very active at HUD.
Holy shit. And the funny thing is, when you say this, as a guy who was the White House press secretary that talks about politics all the time, this is the first time I'm hearing this. I just wonder how, and these are big wins for not just you, but for the country and for Trump. And I'm thinking to myself, why, when you guys pitch this, do the reporters just say, yeah, that's boring, or I don't care, but to me, those are the way you're describing how the transgender stuff. I think about if you're a women's organization or a women's group, you should care about protecting women the way that you're articulating. And I just don't hear about it.
Yeah, we're unashamed. We're unashamed that, according to biological truth, according to biblical truth, male and female are different. And in these HUD-funded facilities, our females will be protected. Let's talk about illegal immigration.
Yeah.
We, at HUD, we signed the MOU with Secretary Noem at Department of Homeland Security to make sure that American people are not only a priority, but our only priority when it comes to receiving HUD-funded housing. So illegal aliens no longer can receive funding to live in HUD-funded housing.
Well, but for a lot of people, I think they're finding that just insane that you could. So is it in the previous administration, did you not have to be a citizen to get HUD funding?
You did, but they didn't enforce it.
Okay,
so let's say for FHA, HUD-backed mortgages, FHA loans, there was a section that said non-permanent residence category. And so we took this down so that illegal aliens could no longer receive FHA-backed mortgages. Taxpayer dollars in America go and are supposed to go to American citizens. And so we are making sure that along with the president and Secretary Noem, they're doing a great job in securing the border and closing the border. 96% decrease, but the resources that we still have at HUD, we want to protect those resources and make sure that they're going to American people and American only.
When you're sitting down talking to the president about HUD issues, in the back of my mind, I've walked his properties with him. And the guy's a builder at heart, right? He's pointing it out to different folks. Change that. I want that mirror replaced. I mean, he is a builder.
Yes.
How does that impact your ability to do your job? Because this is a guy who when you talk about housing and facilities and building and this is in his DNA.
Yes. And so and he's also a person of excellence. And he wants to make sure that the American people that we serve are living in places, that are striving for excellence. And so as the HUD secretary and the steward of this agency, that's my job. And that's also my desire, is to make sure that when we have people in America, American citizens living in HUD-funded housings, that those operations are operating at a point of excellence. And I can tell you, at this point, all of them are not, but we're going after each and every one, taking inventory to make sure that we're very detailed and deliberate according to the president's leadership and the leadership of myself and our team at HUD, that the American people are served well.
You mentioned some of these savings that you guys have found. How much of that is Elon Musk and the Doge team going in, and how much is that of Secretary Turner telling his staff, go find this?
Well, it's both. We have from day one, we set up a Doge task force at HUD. And so every Doge member, they're a part of our HUD team. They're a part of our HUD family. And I said, listen, we're going to all move in one sound, one voice. And so whether you're coming here from Doge or whether you're an employee of HUD, everybody is on the same team. And so we've had a great working relationship to find over $2 billion in savings for the American people. You know what? You have to be intentional, Sean. You know this. You have to be intentional about finding waste, fraud, and abuse. And I believe that's our responsibility.
So the last thing I just want to ask you is that when Elon Musk, if he departs the government, does that effort and does that endure? Does Secretary Turner say, hey guys, Elon's gone, but the mission and the work still continues?
Yes, we still, because whether Doge is there or not, we still have to be good stewards over taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
Doge has been a great enhancement and teammate and help for that. But our mission is, again, to take inventory of every program office and to be detailed and delivered by every dollar that goes out of HUD's door. Because, Sean, at the end of the day, My job is to make sure that we maximize our budget and serve the people we've been called to serve.
Secretary Turner, thanks for spending time with us today.
You.
Congratulations on a great 100 days, and
Thank you.
Stay in touch.
All right,
All right, man.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
All right, guys. What a great show. And as I said, tomorrow, great panel discussion coming your way. And then Friday, Byron Donalds and our friend Tim Murtaugh to break down the first 100 days. And go to SeanSpicer.com, because the newsletters, I've been really having fun getting some cool pictures and graphs and all that kind of stuff, and giving you the latest about what's happening. So the next one comes out on Friday. Go to SeanSpicer.com and sign up. Before we leave you today, I want to give you a quick tribute. My friend David Horowitz passed away the night before last. David was a true pioneer in the conservative movement. I met David well over 25 years ago. He came up to Capitol Hill to speak. He's been a friend and a supporter ever since. I've spoken at a couple of his restoration weekends. And his journey to conservatism was amazing. He started off as like a little communist organizer and became one of the most ardent conservative people in the movement. And it was his work that really helped give voice to so many conservative policies. He had a lengthy battle with cancer. He passed away at the age of 86. As I said, a great friend, a good patriot. My best to the Horowitz family in their time of mourning. Thank you, David, for everything that you did for our movement. And to all of you, thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great night. I will see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.